Hey everybody, welcome to Sportsline. I am Frank Wolf from WNYathletics.com. Today is Wednesday, April 29th, and today we're going to do a football recruiting show. What to ask for, what to do, how to go about getting recruited, what can you do as a parent, what can you do as an athlete, and what do recruiters do, what do they look for when you're out there playing your sport of choice. Now today we're going to talk football. We're going to focus on football, but we will do others in the next couple of weeks, so bear with me through this segment at least. We got three very well-established coaches, two from Division III. Jason Mangone from Brockport, Christian Ozolins from Buff State, and Coach Shaffner from Colgate, who was at Buff State and knows the landscape very well. These are guys that recruit this area heavily, day in, day out, and they got a lot to say. And they answer a lot of our questions. I know many of you sent questions to me when we first hinted at doing this show, and I got most of them answered for you, and they are going to do the show again. We'll do this again with those coaches, or maybe single at one at a time, but we'll have them on again, and we'll get more of your questions answered in the future. But there's a lot of good questions that were answered today. Transferring, when can you offer, things that are red flags, so on and so forth. A lot to talk about. Let's get right into it. You're watching Sportsline.
We didn't get here by accident. It starts with a plan. A plan to protect your future, to invest in your future. It started with Scroy Financial. Plan, protect, invest. Scroy Financial.
Watch the language, gentlemen.
Morning, everybody.
I'll try.
WNYathletics.com, and this is
No comments on the
Sportsline.
pink room that I'm in
Today,
either.
I've got three characters with me, and I'm just very happy to have them here with me. Coach Jason Mangone from Brockport. We have Coach Christian Ozolins from Buff State, and Coach Paul Shaffner from Colgate. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on the program today. We're talking about football recruiting. We want to make sure that the information that's out there on what goes on behind the scenes, you know about. You as a student athlete, as a parent, or a coach that doesn't maybe know exactly what's involved. A new coach that's just jumping into this. We want to help you. We want to make sure that what goes on behind the scenes, you understand and get a feel for what's really going on out there. When can you offer a player? When can you start talking to players? When does a coach start looking at recruits? How do they go about that? What do they look at? How closely do they monitor social media? How close are their relationships with the head coaches at various high schools? What areas are they looking for? And how are they trying to build their team for the future? Does it include you? So we're going to talk to three coaches that you know and you love. I love them. Even though I've never talked to Coach Mangone before and I've never talked to Coach Shaffner, I feel like I've known him my whole life. So Coach Mangone from Brockport, you guys have had quite a bit of success out there the last few years, and I noticed that your team is made up of a number of Western New York Section 6 and Monsignor Martin players. Good morning. Thanks for being with us today. My first question to you would be, what got you into coaching first? How long did it take you to become a head coach at the collegiate level? And what's the toughest thing for you when it comes to finding the next blue chip athlete to help your program win?
Thanks for having me. First and foremost, love to have something on my calendar in this crazy time. So it was nice to actually have a meeting set up other than with our own guys. Why did I want to become a head coach? How that happened? I wanted to coach. I knew that from an early age. I started playing football at, I think, 6. And by the time I was 7, I kind of fell in love with the X and O part of it. Probably asking questions at a young guy's age that maybe I shouldn't have, just because I wanted to know why we were doing something and maybe drove my coaches crazy. And then as I got older and I realized that I was 5'9", my playing career was going to be over after the college level. And again, just continued to fall in love with the X and O aspect. And then was blessed enough to have Len Jankowicz as my high school coach, I've described him for many years as my second father, and one of the greatest men in the world. And then went on to play at Alfred U and in Brockport and got learned a ton from Coach Moretti at Alfred, and then played with Rocco Salomone, who I was blessed to coach with for 15 years, and really instilled repeatedly the passion of the game in me. And then I just finished my 20th year coaching and my 7th year as a head coach. So, followed the path of position coach, and then an offensive coordinator, and then a head coach. So it's been a fun journey, and one that hopefully lasts for a while longer. In terms of the blue chip thing, there's so much that goes into recruiting, and I'm sure we're going to touch on with the two other gentlemen as well, Coach Oz and Coach Shaffner. But, it's trying to identify first and foremost a guy that stands out on film as a player, and then ultimately getting the transcript, seeing what the grades are, tardiness, missed days of school, which sometimes I look at first more than the GPA. Who's a kid that can get to school on time, and who can be a kid that goes to school every day. Because we always tell our kids, like, who are you on your worst day? Not only on your best day. And if you don't feel well, or as I tell my guys, if you got the sniffles and you don't have a good practice, well, then how can we rely on you? And then just getting to know the kid, getting to know their competitive nature, their willingness to sacrifice, and there's a million things that go into it. But when you get a good one, boy, I'll tell you, it's a good feeling.
I'm going to go to Christian Ozolins from Buff State, who was officially named head coach, and we're very, very happy for him. We know he's paid his dues. Look at that. Look at that goatee he's growing. He's putting this to shame. I've got about 2 weeks on this. I don't know how long it's taken you to grow that, but the last time I saw you, I think I had more hair on my head than you had on your chin.
Yeah, probably so. I'm catching up with Jason. Week 3, I'll have mine longer than his.
That's a work of art, though. He's got a work of art going on down there. Don't set the bar too high.
Yeah. No, but thank you for having me here, Frank. I appreciate it.
No, I love the fact that you're over there, and I want to ask you, because you're obviously you're right in the heart of Section 6. Number of athletes have already committed there. You got some really good ones. You just had one big guy from Lancaster, Connor Mahoney, who I'm excited to see next year play at Buff State. Does it hurt sometimes recruiting because you are right in Buffalo? Do you feel like a lot of these football kids, they have it in their head that they want to go play college football, but if they're playing right in Buffalo, they grew up in Buffalo. Maybe it's not the feel. Maybe they feel like it's too close to home. They want to go maybe out to like a Brockport or an Alfred or Utica or something like that. Does it hurt at all being right in Buffalo where Section 6 is?
I don't know if it hurts. It is one of the hurdles that we have to overcome. And the biggest thing that I use with our kids in Western New York right now is, and you hit on it, some kids want to, there's a difference between wanting to go away to college, or do you want to just get out of the house? That's where we find kids now that are finding out, well, I don't have to go away. All I want to do is just get away from mom and dad, and I don't want to watch Jeopardy at 7 o'clock with them. So we get them to stay here in Western New York, go to college, live on campus. And, this year we've done a nice job. We've been able to regain some of Section 6, and that's kind of what my job was when I took over the program, was to regain Section 6 and try to keep those kids here. Then there are kids that just don't want to stay here in Western New York. They want to get away. They want to spread their wings. And at that point, there's nothing you can really do to keep them here.
So when my question is then,
you let them go?
Yeah. Basically, that's where I was going to go. When you sit down with a recruit for the first time, is that one of the first questions? Do you want to stay home, or are you looking to go away?
Frank, that's one of the first questions. Yes, I ask them, do you want to go away, or do you want to get out of the house? Because sometimes, like I said, kids don't understand that. They think they have to go away to get away from mom and dad. But then what we do is, and I learned this once again, it's a unique situation here, Frank, because, I worked for Coach Shaffner, and, I learned a lot from him. But the big thing is, what I did learn from him is, when a kid tells you he doesn't want to stay here in Western New York, you wish him best of luck. And when Coach Shaffner was here, we had a number of rebound kids that go away and then they come back because you didn't sit there and, hang up on them or, tell them, well, that's great, fine, don't ever talk to you again. And that's what happens in Western New York, I think, especially. Kids go away, realize that maybe Buffalo's a great place, and they decide to come back. So, but there are some that go away, and they find better places. But we try to find the right fit, and there's a number of good football players out there to do a big song and dance to try to entice a kid to come there. You don't retain them. They got to come because they truly want to be a part of what you have there, and that's how you keep your retention.
Great answer, Coach Shaffner. Now out at Colgate, man, you've got unbelievable position that you're in as the assistant coach there, and we congratulate you on that appointment. How are things different where you are now compared to where you were when you were in D3? How much tougher is the competition for athletes?
Oh, as you walk up the ladder, it's a harder climb every time, every rung. I think that probably, it's all relative. I guess, you're just, you're competing against, different people. But the competition doesn't really change, if you understand what I mean. It's, as opposed to when I was at Buff State, as opposed to having to deal with Jason and Brockport and Alfred and Cortland and those people, now it's Holy Cross and Bucknell and Lehigh and, and the Macs and the Ivy Leagues and those are the people that we're competing against. I think the great thing that's happened at the Patriot League level is the fact that we went to scholarships about 7 years ago. So, going to full athletic grant and aids really allowed us to kind of get into a different category. We were able to actually start to compete with the Villanovas, the Delawares, the UNHs, and those types of people, Albany, as well as, with the other Ivy Leagues and stuff, because we had a full scholarship to offer. So, it's allowed us to kind of branch our wings a little bit and to do a little bit more national recruiting than we had to previously.
Coach, I'm going to ask you another question before I go to Coach Mangone. When you first see a student athlete and you see that he has the tools in terms of physicality, he can play the position in which you're looking to fill. Then you sit down with that athlete and you see that maybe he may have the tools, but he's lacking other areas that you want to see in a player. And it could be academics. It could be his social mannerisms. It could be the fact that maybe he's not ready for a big stage. As good as this athlete is, he's not going to be able to take that and use that in a Division I setting. How often do you see that? And do you normally see that in a close setting where you're sitting down across the table from one of these athletes?
Yes and no. Yes and no. And yes, it happens a lot more than a lot of people think. I think a lot of high school kids, a lot of parents and coaches, hey, he's a great athlete. Why aren't you recruiting him? To be honest with you, his athleticism and his athletic ability is kind of really one of three main categories that we look at, and it's not even the first one. The first one we're going to look at is the transcript. For us, a kid has to be able to get into school. We can't, we don't bend when it comes to, GPA and test scores and those types of things. They've got to meet a certain level to be able to make the selectivity of a Colgate, a Patriot League school. And then, then obviously there's the athletic component. But I think one of the big components too is that, and to be honest with you, kids kill themselves on social media. First thing I do is find out if they got a Twitter, and even me as an old guy, I can even have learned how to how to find a guy on Twitter. And if I find him,
I see here, at Coach_Shaff.
Yeah, and if I look at it and I see things that I don't necessarily like, then that kid's going down the list. And obviously character. I loved what Jason said. I look at how many times has he missed school. How many times has he been tardy? How many times has he been absent? Those things are extremely important, because when you're looking at the type of school that Colgate is, you better have a kid that's not just dedicated on the football field, but he's dedicated in his life. Coach is going to speak highly of him. Is he a captain? Is he a leader on the team? Is he, got the kind of character, integrity, that is going to allow your program to shine? Or does he have the character and integrity that's going to bring you down? So there's a lot of other factors that go into things. And, what's right for Colgate may not be right for, Bus State, or may not be right for a Bucknell or a Lehigh or a Lafayette. Everybody looks for something a little different, but, it doesn't mean that the kid's not a good kid or he's not a great football player or anything like. He's just not our fit. And, that happens. And, I see it happen a lot in Western New York with our kids in Western New York. And I get coaches saying, well, why aren't you recruiting this kid? Well, he's just not. He doesn't fit our offense. He doesn't fit our defense. He's not the type of character kid we want. Doesn't mean he's bad. He's just not our guy,
Excellent. I'm going to come back to you, because I got a couple other good questions for you that I'd love to get your answer on. Coming up to Coach Mangone. Coach Mangone, you guys obviously have been very successful the last few seasons. You're constantly trying to add and build off of what you've started. Are there players right now in Section 6, Monsignor Martin, that you see can really make a difference to help you guys keep that program going, that you've been able to bring in? Who are you excited about in this 2020 class in particular that are heading your way this fall?
Yeah, we got a few guys from Section 6. We had a bunch. And, being from Lancaster, obviously, my roots are from there. And, when I took over the program in 2013, it was kind of what Coach Ozolins was speaking of. We have to win our backyard. And what we deem our backyard is Section 5 in Rochester, Section 6 in Buffalo, and Syracuse in Section 3. That's the perimeter for us. We would probably like to have 65 to 70% of our roster from those three sections. And not because there's not talent anywhere else, because we've done a very good job downstate. It's just because the chances of getting a young man from those three areas are probably a little bit higher than getting somebody from a Long Island, although we still do our best. But Alex Reinhardt from Bishop Timon is one of our guy we're really juiced up about for next year. I mean, he's 6'3", 275. He can play the nose. He'll play a 4-eye. He'll be a 5-tech. Kid runs. Tremendous baseball player. So we're pretty juiced up about him. Matt Marshner from Lancaster. A big 6'2", 235-pound linebacker. A guy that for us fits what we want to do. And, we talk about, again, there's a million things. And I love what Coach Shaffner was talking about, how it has to be a fit for his program and what they do. You have to recruit schematically. You got to recruit for what you do. We have a young man that just is going to be a GA for us, Alex West, that as a freshman was phenomenal. He's out of Dansville High School, was phenomenal on our scout team, but didn't fit our 4-2-5 scheme. We changed to an Okie going into his sophomore year, and he becomes an all-region, all-American for 3 years in a row. So you have to recruit for your scheme, and then you got to obviously evolve what you do around the talent you have. But, those are two amongst many guys that we got out of Section 6 that we're pretty pumped about, that, we can build on our program. We didn't have quite the year we wanted last year, but we only started 5 seniors, and we only lose 12 off our entire team. So we have a lot of guys back that we're pretty excited about that got a lot of minutes as freshmen and sophomores. And, but we tell them you don't get better just because you get a year older. You get better because you put the work in. And maybe this year more than any, because with what we're going on right now, there is no available weight room for a lot of our guys to get into. So what are you doing with what you have allotted in terms of body weight exercises? Can you run in your front yard? If you're in New York City, can you even leave your apartment? I mean, let's be honest, right? Some of these kids, we don't even want them leaving their residence. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic next year if we're, fingers crossed, allowed to play football and to see how this thing shakes out.
Absolutely. And I'm coming back to you in just a little bit, Coach Ozolins from Buff State. You, with your son, you just went through the entire recruiting process with CJ, now heading to Mercyhurst this fall. This is the big question of the day. When can a college football program offer, verbal or otherwise, when can they first offer a student athlete?
Well, I think that's where parents and people kind of get the misconception of offer. And because unlike my Division III cannot offer anything, there is no scholarships. And that's where sometimes you see the social media part kills me, because kids are I'm so blessed I received an offer. We received an offer to join a program, and that's it, and pay tuition and everything else. Unlike Coach Shaffner can offer full scholarships. So to be honest with you, Frank, I don't know when they can offer. I don't have to deal with that. To me, we're starting now on our 2021 class, and we're still trying to, probably just like, Jason, we're still trying to wrap up our 20 class, okay, because we got cut short. We had 2 recruiting Saturdays still left to do. But I don't know. Coach Shaffner could be a better one to tell you about when they can technically offer. But at the Division III level, because I know Coach Mangone can tell you as well. It's funny when you see these kids. I've been blessed to receive an offer from a Division III program. There is no offer. And that's a social media gimmick that people are doing out there. We don't do that. I'm going to be honest with you. And our coaches have been asking, hey, why aren't we sending out things? Because I don't believe in that. I think it's ridiculous. We're not offering anything other than financial aid. And, to me, it's take your offers when you get the Division I offers or the Division II offers. And but those are also kind of misconceptions as well. And I did go through this with my son, because last year at this time going into his senior year, he had schools that were talking about offers. And then all of a sudden, middle of the end of his senior year, those offers weren't coming around as much, and he kind of so I don't know. It's a different game. Coach Shaffner, I had a long, probably an hour and a half to 2 hour conversation one time. As a dad, I started going, what the hell? Excuse my French. What's going on with my son here? We got the best player in Western New York, and he's only got X amount of schools that are showing interest. He wasn't the right fit for some places. So it's I don't know. I'm going on a little rampage there, but it's unique. But that offer stuff, Frank, that Division IIIs, there is no offers. Like I said, for Division II, Division I, Coach Shaffner can talk more about that because he's coached at those 2 levels. So he knows when they can offer, when kids can actually be offered.
I'm going to go to Coach Schaff with the same question, but Jason and Christian, I got a hot button question for the 2 of you in just a moment, so get ready. Get your Snickers out. This one's coming. You guys are going to love this question. But Coach Shaffner, in regards to offering from the D1 level, when can you officially offer a student athlete a football scholarship?
August 1st of their senior year.
Okay.
August 1st of their senior year is when an official offer can be made. And when I say official, that means that it can be put in writing.
Okay.
Up until then, it's all just oral, verbal, communication. I think that, in both levels work, 1 and 2 work the same thing. And whether you're FBS or FCS. It doesn't, that really hasn't changed. The FBS level, though, is now starting, especially the Power Fives. They're starting to move their official visits up to summertime, and moving. The recruiting calendar just keeps getting pushed farther and further ahead. But August 1st is that date, and I think the biggest thing, when you had talked about offers earlier. I think the biggest thing that the kids get caught up with are these offers. One of the things I hate to watch is, oh, I'm so blessed and honored, just get my 15th offer. You kidding me? Really? You're counting them? Oh, I'm so blessed, and God has blessed me and my family, and I'm so honored to get my 26th offer. Like, who the hell cares? I think that, to be honest with you, when I see that, I don't even want to recruit those kids. I really don't. And they could be our type of kid, but I don't want that kid, because he's more into himself than he is into everything else. In 90% of offers that are made at this time are uncommittable. And that's kind of the new buzzword over the last few years, is uncommittable offers. You offer a kid, but he can't commit. So why did you offer him?
One of the misconceptions.
He can't commit because he doesn't. Go ahead.
One of the misconceptions we see here a lot, and I'll have these quote unquote high school coach recruiters, if you will, tell me that, I hear you're going off that, these offers aren't offers. I could show you the paperwork. I could show you the emails. We have an offer from West Virginia. We have an offer from Syracuse. And my thing is, well, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. You're talking about a freshman or a sophomore that is good high school athlete, but I'd love to see that offer. And then you never see it.
No.
So that's why we wanted to put that to rest, that you cannot officially offer a student athlete until August 1st of their senior year.
Yeah, for football. I know that's for football. And I remember talking with Cheech about CJ. In the spring, he had all kinds of people talking to him. But when it came down for those schools to actually put something in writing and send it out, didn't happen. So all these kids get, all excited because all these schools are talking offer, scholarship. But when it came time to actually put it in writing, nobody put it in writing for them. And that's, that's tough on a kid. That's tough. I think that's, and I don't think that that's very good, from our standpoint, when we do that to a kid. One of the things that we do at Colgate, we don't offer. If you've looked on social media right now, you won't find one offer out there for Colgate. I don't care how good the kid is. We're not going to offer until the end of spring. And, when we do make an offer, that offer will be committable. So the kid can say yes. If I say, hey, there's a couple kids in Western New York we would love to, make offers to. They've got some offers, but we're not going to offer them yet because it's just, that's not how we operate. But when we do, they can say, yeah, coach, I want to come. I want to be a part of your program. And we'll say, yes, sir, and we'll jump up and down and hallelujah when they do say yes. So, it's just the way we work. But there's a lot of other schools that got 300 offers out there. It's like 300 offers. You only have 17 slots. You only have 15 scholarships, and you've got 300 offers out. So.
Yep. Coach Shaffner, you recruit this area. You recruit Western Pennsylvania 5-6. When you look at Section 6, I don't know the last time you've had a real good opportunity to go through, but are there players right now entering their senior season that you are very intrigued by?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because you want to. I want these kids to know that people are always like, well, I don't know if I'm good enough here and there. I want to hear from a Division I coach say exactly what you just said. There are Division I players right now in Western New York. Maybe they know it, maybe they don't know it, but it's nice to have that reassurance that there is a D1 coach out there believing in Section 6 and
I would
Muncie.
definitely say that there's some 1AA FCS kids out there without question. I don't think there's any Power Fives. There might be one, maybe, but I think Western New York, Section 5, Section 6 is always going to have a handful of FCS kids. I really believe that, and it's getting better and better. Especially Section 6 has gotten a lot better over the last few years. Section 5 has always kind of been a little bit ahead of Section 6, I think, in that regard. But there's a handful of kids out there, that have the opportunity, and just because they have the opportunity now doesn't mean that's where they're going to end up, either, because they're just, there's not that many scholarships out there to go around, and that's, then it all comes down to, hey, what's the fit and all that other stuff for everybody, and I think people look and say, well, we're not just recruiting Western New York. We're recruiting Western New York. We're recruiting all of Pennsylvania, all of Ohio, all of Virginia, all of Tennessee, all of Kentucky, all of Indiana, all of Michigan, all of Texas, all of Florida, all of Georgia. I mean, we're recruiting everywhere in a sense. So, and when we, this coming season or this coming recruiting year, we're only going to have, I think, 10 scholarships. So, you do the math.
Yeah. Don't make me do math. They said there'd be no math questions today. I'm going to go up to Coach Mangone, and my question is this. It's been brought to our attention here at WNY Athletics that within the last year, maybe even 2 years, that there has been a school or schools in Western New York, Section 6, Monsignor Martin, where you may have been interested, not you personally, but a D3 school may have been interested in a specific player or players. You arrive at the school wanting to speak with someone, but literally turned away because whoever was handling this player at the time didn't believe that it was a good fit for the player, or your school was beneath this player's capability. Has that happened to you? And how often does it happen? Is it widespread, or is it a handful of schools, a handful of handlers? And does this diminish your relationship with the institution or school in which this particular player you had interest in?
That's a tough question, but one that I will happily answer. And it's happened. I mean, it's and I don't know if it's always out of spite. There are coaches that are obviously, we deal with all these guys, and I've been blessed to do this for 20 years, and I've recruited on the road in Buffalo for 20 years and have made a lot of great relationships. And a lot of times guys are looking out for their players. The way I always try to go about this is I'll call the coach and say, hey, listen, we want to talk to, A, B, and C. These are the guys, or this is the guy that I'd love to talk to. And if there's anybody else that you deem can play and compete at Division III level, I'd love to talk to them. And, then I can, if I don't know about those extra kids, I'll go back and watch film and decipher myself if they fit our program or the things that we're looking for. And there's been numerous times that I've been told, well, this guy's going to go to this level. And that's fine. All that I'm asking for is an opportunity to talk to that young man. We have a kid on our roster right now that'll be a junior he's 6'8", 325, and did not play as a freshman for us and started this year as a sophomore. And when we first initially reached out, we were told, well, you can't speak with him. He's not going to play D3. And we were like, okay, well, let us just have the opportunity. If he chooses that he doesn't want to go to Brockport, then that's fine. Not everybody's meant to come to Brockport. Well, he obviously ended up with us, and he had 4 half 1 AA offers. Wow. So he chose to still attend our university. He had a great sophomore year. But if we didn't have that opportunity ultimately to speak with him, we would never have gotten his commitment, and then he would never be in a Brockport uniform. And it does happen. It's disappointing when it does. And to be honest with you, if we were to talk to a kid that we thought was very talented and Coach Shaffner came in from Colgate and said, listen, we're offering you, I would pack his stuff and tell him to go to Colgate myself. I would never tell him to do anything other than that. You know, it's just if he falls through the cracks, kind of like what Coach was talking about, some of these schools, and he knows them, and Coach Ozolins knows them. When we go talk to 14 different high schools in 5 days, and every one of those kids has an offer from this same university, it's like, okay, well, they've offered, you know, they're offering a lot of kids, and they're not going to be able to back that up. And some of these kids are going to wait out from committing to some of these universities. And before you know it, it comes to April and they have no home. And there's a few kids right now that we're still talking to that kind of shunned us away back in December and January, that all of a sudden we've gotten phone calls from. And now, to be honest with you, they've got to really convince me why we should take them. And that's not being above anybody or an elitist, nothing like that. It's just we want kids that are going to commit to Brockport, that'll be here with us for 4 or 5 years, and that will give us everything they have. So, you know, going back to your kind of initial question, it has happened to us. It is very frustrating. But all you can do is just kind of move on and go to that next prospect and try to find a way to find your roster.
Is it tough trying to recruit a player who has an outside recruiting service working on the athlete's behalf, or are there recruiting services out there that are extremely reputable, have good people representing these student athletes? And would you, I'm trying to find a good way to word this, would you rather see the student athlete represented by a worthwhile recruiting service as opposed to just like a handler or a guy who played college football that knows the deal and thinks he knows what's in the student's best interest, or would you recommend them working with a service if they have the means, of course?
Yeah, I think that's different by everybody. To me, the high school coach is the ultimate. Whether they like the young man, because let's be honest, right? You're not going to love every single kid that has played for you. So I think, you know, the coach first and foremost. Handlers really don't deal with handlers. You know, and there's guys that I know in areas that will try to say, hey, you know, so-and-so is a good football player, this, that, and the other thing. I've never really dealt with a handler. Recruiting services, they get the information out. I think that's great. But let's be honest, right? The lifeline of all of our programs is through recruiting. It's through talent. And, you know, I tell people all the time, it's not the jockey, it's the horse, right? And, you know, if you don't have good ones, you're probably not going to have a good year. When you have good ones, you're probably going to look fairly intelligent. So we are very diligent and very active in our recruiting. And I would assure you there's probably nobody that we are, quote unquote, sleeping on, because if they're good enough, they have the grades and they have the attendance, we're going to want them.
Excellent. And Coach Ozolins, I'm going to come down, and you know what the question is.
Well, yeah, it's happened. You know, it's funny, Coach Mangone, we run into each other quite a bit on the road in Section 6, literally in parking lots and while we're in road in December. And we've talked about it. Hey, well, who did you just see? Well, and we look at each other, well, I didn't see him. I didn't. And so there are coaches that will hide some kids, unfortunately. It is what it is when it comes to that. And I believe we do a great job of making sure going into that school, we've talked with the coach before, we've marked down who we want, and we kind of know. And then if he doesn't bring a kid down, we try to find out, you know, what the reason is, whether it's the coach who's hiding him. Sometimes, and there are some West New York coaches that do a great job. One particular in the Chick-Tawag area that flat out, you know, there was a very good player and just said, Coach, you don't want him because he wasn't come into practice. He was a problem, and he was a very good high school football player. So I appreciate when they give us on that end too, from a high school standpoint. I don't want to always just say, hey, the negatives of it. There's some high school coaches that do a great job of filtering for us as well, because we don't know those things. They're with those kids all the time, and transcripts can only tell you so much. And that I think is one of the things, that is big. But from a recruiting or service standpoint, I think Coach Mangone talked about very well. I mean, it is what it is. It gets information out. I know probably like all the other coaches, my email's filled with constant recruiting services sending stuff out. That's their job. That is their job to do that. And, we'll look at it and everything else. But I think as a college coach, we do a great job, and everybody should be doing their job to filter kids out and look for them even before those come out from a recruiting service standpoint. As for the handlers, that happens more and more, I think, with Buffalo City kids than anybody else. And I say that because there's a lot of little league coaches and friends of the family that have really hurt some kids here in Western New York on not getting them into places or allowing them to look at schools that they would have been more successful at than trying to push them onto scholarship schools, or missed out on a few opportunities because they're worried about them saying, well, I got this kid a scholarship, or I got this kid to go play at this level, when it wasn't the right place for them and it wasn't what was best for the kid. And that's where I think the high school coaches do a very good job of. Coach Graham in Cleve Hill, perfect example of a coach that doesn't worry about where his kids are going, at what level, I should say. He wants his kids going to the best place for them. There needs to be more. Coach Jankowicz was one, Coach Rupp are other ones, and there's a ton of them here in West New York. But there are, you hit it, Frank, there are, and I think I know who you're talking about on the coaches that hide kids and not allow us to come in or tell us they don't have anybody. It's only going to come around and hurt them down the road, because just as Jason had mentioned, we will sit down with 5 kids at a school, and we know there's only 2 of them that we're going to recruit. But guess what? We'll also sit and talk to those 3 others, because moms, dads want to know that high school coach is promoting their kid to go on to the next level. May not be our place, may not be Brockport, but it may be another school that has the luxury of having 150, 170 kids in their program, and they want that opportunity to go to the next level and play or be a part of a program. And so we'll do that. We'll sit down and talk with those kids, and then we'll tell them as we leave, hey, you'll get contacted if we feel you're right for our program and we're going to recruit you. And, just as Jason had mentioned, we're fortunate too. We don't have to recruit mass numbers. We can recruit kids. When they get a call from the Buffalo State coach, they're being recruited. They're not just another number. They're not a kid to fill a classroom. They're going to be one of the 30 to 35 kids that we're bringing in for that class, which I think, which is nice.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you in a second. I got another hot button question for the D3 guys, but I'm going to go to Coach Shaffner. Coach, my question to you is, since you've been at the different levels, how hard is it trying to convince a student athlete that he should be in the D3 as opposed to D1? Because you have kids that are just set in their ways, and they think they're too good for a D3. How hard is it to convince that player and maybe his parents that he is D3 material, not D1 material, and he's going to make a huge mistake waiting and waiting and waiting for that D1 offer?
Yeah. It happens a lot. I mean, we deal with it at Colgate a lot, where, the kid's waiting for that, he wants that Power 5. He wants, Syracuse. He wants Boston College. He wants UConn. He wants, he wants that FBS school to offer him. And, it's just not going to come. And, he really needs to do a better job of looking at the level of, the 1AA level, the CAA, the Patriot League, if he's got good enough grades to Patriot League and the Ivy League, it's hard because every kid has a dream, and you don't want to blow the dream. You don't want to, be the guy that's going to rain on his parade in a sense. But I think that, I think it comes back to the high school coach. My son, just like Cheech's son, went through this process a few years back. And, the one thing that I told Jake and his high school coach was great at, he talked to every single coach that came through the door, whether it was, a D1 school, whether it was Army, West Point, whether it was the Naval Academy, or whether it was Brockport or Hobart, or, it didn't matter. Everybody that came through the door, Jake talked to. And because to be honest with you, I didn't know where Jake was even going to end up. If he was going to, was he going to be a scholarship kid, or was he going to end up in Division III? So I think it really comes down to the high school coach really kind of being able to talk to that kid and say, listen, you need to keep all your options open because you don't know what's going to happen at this point. So it really bothers me when a coach closes the door on somebody. I tell everybody, you should be listening to me. You should be listening to Cheech. You should be listening to Jason. Everybody's got something to offer. And, Colgate might not be the right fit for you. I've had kids turn me down because they don't want that kind of academic challenge, and they end up going to a different type of school that doesn't have the academics that we do.
I got another hot button question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another hot button question. When I announced that I was doing this show, I got at least 37 questions that you can all answer, but I wanted to ask you this one. When you see a student athlete play for 3 different schools in a 4-year period, or 4 schools in 4 years, is that a major red flag?
Yes, and yes. I don't know. Did you hear me? I said yes.
Loud and clear.
Yeah. These, and that is happening so much nowadays. It's ridiculous. But there's no question. I've I hate to use. I've canned 5 kids already this year. They're 2021 kids that have transferred multiple times. If a kid transfers once, I want to know why. Okay, there's a lot of good reasons for that. That could have happened. His parents moved, he moved, his parents split up, the coach left, and, maybe that, one's not bad. But when they start transferring multiple times, that's a major red flag for me. I don't want that kid, because the first time it doesn't go his way, he's going to be looking to try to get out of our program. And we can't afford that. We're not that type of a program where we can just kind of reload,
Is it easier to deal with off-field adversity than on-field adversity at times? And adversity is, wide-ranging. You could have a death in the family, dad lose a job, mom lose a job. Adversity comes in all different forms and fashions. But the easy, sometimes we think or look at it as easy adversity. You're at a prestigious school, coach leaves or gets fired, new coach comes in, you jump ship without even knowing who the new next head coach is. Is that a major red flag? Is that adversity that should be easy to deal with for a football player?
Yeah, I think so. I think that he's got to give it an opportunity. There's got to be a reason why, if you're not willing to ever accept adversity, then what kind of a football player are you really end up going to be? Adversity is what really separates the good football player from the great football player. And I'm sure, both my colleagues here can tell you that. Those couple of years that Jason was, kicking ass and taking names. I can guarantee those kids went through major adversity to get to where they got to. There's absolutely no question, and they learned how to overcome that adversity. I think, and I don't know, I got to get off my soapbox here, I guess, a little bit, but I think we allow these kids in our society, we allow them to not face adversity. Oh, it's too tough on you. Well, let's change. Okay, this is too hard for you. Let's change. As opposed to saying, screw you. It's hard. It's tough. Life's tough. Life sucks. Okay, sit down and bear this out and persevere, because you will come out the other side, and you will come out better. And I think too, sometimes we're too soft on these kids and we allow them to do those things as well. So, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of transferring kids. We don't like to take them at Colgate. We're not a big transfer school or anything like that to begin with, but, kids that transfer around a lot, and I know Jason's had to deal with that at his level too and stuff. Red flags for me.
Thank you, Coach. Coach Mangone, similar question, I guess. When you see kids jump ship from team to team for one other reason, does that send up red flags for you? Is that something that you look at? And maybe you have a 10-point system. I'm just spitballing here. You have a 10-point system. Maybe a kid that's transferred once or twice for reasons on the surface that look selfish. Did they lose a couple points? How do you look at that?
Yeah, no, I would mirror Coach Shaffner's comments. I'll be honest with you. If he moves once, could be a very good reason for it, and which is completely out of that young man's control. I would say out of our 100-man roster, we probably have, I'm going to just kind of guesstimate, 60 kids with a one-parent household. And it's becoming more and more prevalent. The parents that both come on a visit with a young man is not as prevalent as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So there may be a situation where a kid has to go, okay, you know what, I'm moving with dad now, or I'm moving with mom, or whatever the case may be. But it's sort of, again, exactly what he said. If it's a second or third time, what are we chasing? Be great where you are, and if you're a guy that's going to play at Colgate, you're going to be a dude. We have dudes at Brockport. There are dudes at Buff State. If you're a dude at a 1AA, you're not going to hide on a high school football field. I can assure you that. You are going to be the most dominant cat on that field. And there's nobody sleeping on a kid that can play 1AA, 1A football. All right. So we have to differentiate at our level the kids that we want from the kids we don't. And oftentimes, and I compare this with resumes, right? You apply for a teaching job at, a school, and there may be 150 applicants for that one job. The first thing that committee's doing is getting rid of people. How do we not find the best? How do we get rid of the worst? And maybe make that pile from 150 to 75. And then we have a different criteria to make it 75 to so forth. And it's a very subjective thing. The same way it is for a young man looking at schools, it is for us looking at prospects. It is subjective. This is not swimming. This is not track. A kid comes in track and runs I'm 11:00, right? As a coach, I can say, okay, maybe I can take that 11:00 and make him a 10:9 or something. But in football, there is no set criteria where he runs an 11 something and we want him. It is subjective. You got to evaluate film. And we evaluated 59 quarterbacks this year. And that was with getting rid of a lot of kids before that. So now we bring in 2 quarterbacks. How do we know which 2 are right for our program? So it's a very subjective thing. And you're always trying to find ways to I guess, eliminate some people. And a lot of times these young kids, unfortunately, make it very easy with some things that they do. It's just kind of the way it is.
Thanks, Coach Mangone. Mangone. Coach Ozolins, I'd love to ask you the same question, and it sounds like you've got a lot to say on the subject. But I wanted to ask you, when you are approached or when you're sitting down with a young man who plays multiple sports, and he wants to play baseball, or he wants to do track or something else outside of football season, is it a detriment for that young man to tell you that right away? Or would you encourage something like that if a kid is exceptional at another sport and wants to play both? Is that looked at in good faith by the coach, or is it one of those things that, maybe it's something where you may pass on a player because you want his full attention 12 months out of the year? That's a question that comes in regularly here.
It does. At the high school level now, that has changed. I know more schools, more scholarship schools are looking for the guys that play multiple sports. They're not looking for that specialized football player that's football only. For us, we'll get some football track kids. That's our combination that we were able to get. We've had some football. Our quarterback, Zach Jeske, was a football basketball player. All right. That's tough because basketball into college level starts in October. So guess what? If we're still barely week 5 when it comes to that. So you're putting a kid at a disservice because he's going to be a little behind. Now you also have to have that other sports coach that is willing to work with you as well, and give that kid a true chance. But from a high school standpoint, I don't really want to look. I will still look in, but I want kids that play multiple sports. I don't want that kid that is, I'm a football player, and then I go to my personal trainer, then I go to my quarterback coach, and then I go to my, my receiver coach that I work in the off season, and then my speed coach in the spring. I want a kid that's playing a lot of different sports because I want them to compete. And like I said, I love wrestlers. I love football wrestlers combinations because those kids got nobody else around them. But then I'd like for them to get back into another team sport because unfortunately wrestling, you go from football, wrestling to track, it can be about you a little too much and you lose the team concept. But, I always want multiple sport kids and would never tell a kid. I mean, my son, was a football and lacrosse player. He wasn't a very good basketball player, so that's why he didn't play it. And everything else. So, but to me, I think it's a big thing. And I know they show it all the time in the NFL draft. They show how many guys that were drafted early or first round or two that were multi-sport athletes in high school. Like I said, at the college level, it's a little harder, especially when you get to Division II, Division III, because those sports have non-traditional seasons. Division III, we have non-traditional. Coach Mangone can tell it's not true. So those kids can play another sport at the Division III level, which I'm going to be honest with you is an attraction to some kids that want to have the opportunity to play 2 sports at the college level. And that to me, that's a great thing to be able to tell somebody. I was a college athlete in 2 sports when, you're sitting back at Christmas time with your kids and, talking about that to me is we push that. We will push that. And we can truly tell kids that they'll have that opportunity because we don't have true non-traditional seasons or spring seasons for football.
Thanks, Coach. I'm going to come back to you guys for one last question for you guys, but I wanted to get Coach Shaffner's thought on the same subject. Players playing multiple sports at the high school level and obviously prior to, before they get to you, how attractive is it to you as a assistant coach at the D1 level, seeing a player with that kind of resume?
Multiple sports, play as many as you can. I love the athlete that I look at that's, football, wrestling, baseball, basketball. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Cheech used the word compete. I want kids that are going to compete all the time. There's plenty of time to get into the weight room. There's plenty of time to do those things. That if I can't play another sport, all right, well then I can't. Like CJ, I know he went to Canisius. I mean, he'd have to be a hell of a basketball player to be able to play, basketball at Canisius High School. and, so he didn't. Okay, so he didn't play a winter sport. That's fine, but he played a spring sport. I like those kids that are playing multiple sports. I want a kid that's going to compete all the time, like I said, I think there's plenty of time for those kids to get into the weight room and to do the things, but I want to see the competition in those kids. I want to see, do they have the fire? Can they to be from a football standpoint, football is different. There's one season to play football. That's it. You can't play football in the spring because take spring ball, all that crap. I'm not talking about that, but there's no AAU football. There's no, what do you want to say? Those types of teams out there where kids can get on other teams and play, live football. You got one season to do it. And so the other seasons, the kids should be doing other things, make them better athletes, make them, so yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I know there's some guys out there that aren't, but hey, Nick Saban, he doesn't take a kid that doesn't play at least two sports, half of his recruiting class are going to be quarterbacks. Why? Because he wants leaders. So there's, yeah, no question.
Coach Shaffner, I want to ask you in regards to the transcripts. What are you looking? What are the numbers? What's the minimum where a player or student athlete has to be to get on your radar? Or the D1 radar?
For us, to get on the D1 radar, you have to be a qualifier. NCAA qualifier, clearinghouse qualifier, which you got to have I don't know, what's it like? To be honest with you, I don't even know what it is anymore because I don't deal with it because, Patriot League, we're above that. We have what we call an AI, academic index, which is a formula that uses a young man's GPA and test score. And we throw it into this, formula and come out with a number that's an AI, and it has to fit into a certain category. But if you were to look, probably, minimum GPA of probably a 3.2 and a minimum SAT of 1100, minimum ACT of a 22-23, something like that. But I'll tell you what, if a kid had a 3.1 and a 1100, he's not getting in. If you understand what I mean. If he has a 3.1, he better have 1,300 on his score. Or if he has 3.9 or 4.0 GPA, he might be able to get away with a 22 ACT. So it's a combination of the two things. But so that's why we eliminate 75% of the kids that we even look at, right? Just like that, because they're, 2.9's not doing it.
I'd have to take that SAT twice to get that score. I don't think I'd even be able to walk on the campus at Colgate just to say hello to somebody. And I'm not kidding. Hey, Coach Mangone, kind of the same question. What are you looking for on those transcripts when you've got the athlete's profile in front of you? What's going to jump out at you, and what's going to be, I think we're not even going to look at this one.
Yeah, it's obviously a lot different than Colgate. Our average student at Brockport is a 91.7 GPA and an 1170 SAT. For football, and just for the school in general, the earlier you apply, the better it is because the sample size is a lot smaller. The later you wait, obviously the pile gets bigger and it gets harder. So, we're always comfortable with kids that are about an 85, 84 GPA and around 1,000 to 1,050. We'll get in. And so if you're below that or you're at those parameters, you better apply early. And then, we work with admissions, and it's not, we can say, hey, you can get somebody in. I can't go to admissions and go, listen, I want this kid in, but I'm going to fight for them in what we refer to as the holistic student. saying, hey, this guy is the, he's on the football team. He's in this club. He does this activity. He's doing more than just go to school, which I tell people all the time is fine. If you're not involved with activities, that's okay. But if somebody is, they're obviously making a commitment to that high school in a lot of different areas. And we fight that way. But you know what, I have to have something to fight with. I won't go to admissions with a kid that has 12 tardies in the first quarter of his senior year. It's just not going to happen because ultimately he's not going to make it. And I can't spend time recruiting somebody and coaching somebody and trying to develop somebody that's not invested in themselves. And, call it what it is. I am in the business of results. I am in the business of winning. People, I see coaches all the time, and this is great stuff. When we're trying to make men later on, I get that, and I'm trying to do the same thing. But today, I want to win football games, and I want guys on my roster kind of to mirror what these two guys we're talking about. I want competitive, effort-based guys that are willing to sacrifice to get things done, not only for themselves but for the betterment of the team. Simple as that.
Oh, you're not going to like this question that much, so I apologize.
I like questions.
How often do you get it wrong? You got a guy, he's okay.
We're not perfect. Listen, I tell people all the time, right? It's even after games, I'm the play caller on offense, and unfortunately, I'm going to make bad calls during a game, and I will bow to the crowd. I don't need mom and dad yelling from the crowd bad calls because it happens. I will bow and say, listen, I screwed up. I anticipated this front or this stunt or this coverage, and it didn't give it to us, and I put our players in a bad position, and it's no different in recruiting. We're going to miss out on a guy here and there. But we do a very diligent, exhausted process that does not just involve myself. It involves my whole staff. Everybody has a say in every kid. And then ultimately we expose our recruits on campus to not only our current players, but to all of our coaches so that we can get a kind of collective feel of, hey, listen, I love this kid's personality. He is going to fit in, or the contrary. I've had coaches come to my office the minute a recruiting day ends and go, never contact that kid again because he is not going to fit in our program. And it's not a bad testament to that young man. It just doesn't fit for what we want. And our 3 full recruiting classes as seniors right now are, I think, 36-5. Where our first class in 17 went 13-1 as seniors. Our second class went 11-1 as seniors, and our third class went 9-3. So, I think we've done a decent job of evaluating who we want in our program, ultimately making a connection with them to have them come to Brockport, and then developing them along the way. So it's been a fun process.
Jason, one last question I had for you, and I'm going to let Ozolins, Coach Ozolins answer it as well, and even Coach Shaffner. If you could make a suggestion to Western New York high school football, what would you suggest to the Section 6, Monsignor Martin, those that put the showcases together, things of that nature, and then what would you want to change or say to those student athletes that are looking to play football at the next level? What can the section and Monsignor Martin do better to prepare those players? What can those players do to show out and get themselves in a position where a Coach Mangone would call him, a Coach Shaffner would call him, or, even a Coach Lance Leipold might call them? What can they do different? And then as far as the showcases go, do we need more of them? Do we need more recruiting nights like what Coach Jankowitz does every year out at the stadium? What can we do different to help get these kids to the next level?
Well, one thing I've suggested, and obviously, like I said before, my relationship with Coach Jankowitz is tremendous. And, we share ideas back and forth and to try to evolve what he has done out at St. Francis High School of trying to combine what he has done with a showcase and trying to show the abilities of the young people, and then also combining maybe a platform of where we can talk to those individuals afterwards. We do the recruiting fairs in December, and they're great, but a lot of times we've already talked to these young people already at the high school. The difference may be is when a guardian or loved one or parent comes with them. So for me to go to a showcase after I've already talked to a young man in a high school is great because it's more exposure for me in front of them. But ultimately, I want to meet their parent or who's their loved one or whatever. If their loved one doesn't come, it's maybe not as important as it could be. I think the biggest thing for these kids is, and the coaches, is maybe just, and a lot of them do this, and there's as Coach Ozolins said earlier, there are a lot of phenomenal high school coaches that advocate for their young people. And I don't mind being the bad person and saying we're not going to recruit somebody based on our needs. But there are a lot of coaches that give us all their kids, and I can't say how happy and thankful we are for them. But maybe putting a little database together and saying, hey, here are my 3 or 4 or 5 guys that I deem have the ability to play at the next level. Here's their transcript, because ultimately I want their transcript now. And then here's their film. If a kid doesn't have a highlight film put together, how pumped is he about playing at the next level? You know, if I got to search for your film, you don't really want to play. If a kid doesn't have a film ready and I've got to ask you to make one, we're probably already on to somebody else. That's just kind of how it's going to be. And then the most important thing I will tell you is do not have mom and dad call me on your behalf. You call me. You email me. The last thing I don't want to hear mom going, hey, you know, I filled out Johnny's application. No. Johnny needs to fill out that application. I don't understand why you're filling it out for him, because when it comes to school and he's got to get up and go to class in the morning, are you waking him up? Are you coming to his dorm? Because I'm not, you know, and he's got to be able to start growing up as an individual. So these are little things that, to me, I understand the intention. It's all for the best. I get it. But these are kind of, it's an interview. It's an ongoing interview. And we're asking questions and they're interviewing us the same way, but it's a two-way road here. And these are little things that may turn me off personally. If I've got a question or two by the parent, I get it. But when mom and dad are doing everything for the young man, that is a turn off for me.
Thanks, Coach. Really appreciate those answers and the honesty. And Coach Ozolins, same question for you, my man.
Well, it's funny. Jason brought that up. I just got a phone call this morning from a mom wanting to know how her son can join the program. So it just cracked me up. But no, I know, and Jason and I have talked with Coach Jankowicz after those recruiting nights and everything, and how those can be merged, because I think they're too far spread. And recruiting now in December is pretty much, other than going to visit the kids at the school, we're pretty much set. We know who we're looking for. And even at the Division III level, with Huddle and everything else, we're so far ahead of the game. That December recruiting fair is nice to shake hands and kind of familiarize yourself a little bit more with parents and everything else. But Jason had a perfect hit it on that. Transcripts, film, all that stuff. When we go in to visit, and I know all of us here go on the road. We're like no other sport in college. We still actively go into high schools and meet with kids. There isn't another sport out there that does that at college. Basketball, track, or any of them. We actually go into schools and meet with the kids. So for high school coaches to have copies of their transcripts waiting for us when we get there, because that's the last thing I want to do is sit down and talk to a kid and he fills out the athletic form and he writes down, I have an 82 average. Okay, well then I get his transcript and he has a 67 GPA. Well, he had 82 average in gym. Okay, that marking period, that's what he put down. I just wasted my time. So that's where I think it would help us out. Okay, and from a showcase standpoint, I think what they do over at St. Francis is gotten so much better than what it used to be. Jason and I laugh. There's a section 5-1 that him and I get together and we sit there and we shoot the breeze for about an hour and 45 minutes because, well, we can only watch so much broad jumping and benching and shuttle runs. I want to see football stuff. So, and, you know, that's a big thing. But to be able to combine that to it's actual recruiting event afterwards, I think would be big. Some way, somehow. You know, it'd be a long day, and it's a long, but to have everybody there at one time, they have 230 some kids. And, the only other thing I would say is make it only that juniors. I don't care about sophomores. Guys going into their junior year. Coach Shaffner may, and they can't go to those anyways. So it doesn't really affect them. But at the Division III level, I'm not 2 classes ahead. I'm 1 class ahead when it comes to recruiting. So right now I don't want to talk to a 2022 kid. It doesn't do me any good. So let me talk to that. So I know they want the numbers at that showcase, but it doesn't do me any good when I'm watching a kid, then I go over and say something to him and he's going to be a junior. Well, all right, I'll talk to you, 18 months from now that way. So just my thought on it.
Always appreciated. Coach Shaffner, from what you spent time in Western New York, so you know the landscape pretty well. What would you suggest that we could possibly do different here to get those kids the exposure and maybe just help them along the way to prepare for that interview with a coach like yourself?
Yeah. I think both Jason and Cheech, hit it right on the head. And I think one of the number one things that they said is the high school coach, if he takes an active role, I don't think he needs to be the cheerleader. I don't think he needs to be a recruiting guru. I don't think he needs to be their sponsor or anything like that, but just provide the information when a coach asks, who are, it's like I sent, just to give you an idea, okay, I sent an email to every single head coach in Section 5 and Section 6. Probably the rate of return was around 50%. Now, why didn't the other 50% return? All they had to do was say, nobody this year, coach. I have no one this year, or I do have someone, whatever it is. But just, making sure that the names are kind of get out there. And I think, and I don't mean to be putting it on the head coach, because I don't want them to be a cheerleader. I just want them to be, provide the information. I don't need them to be the recruiter, the prospects, man in the corner and manager and all that kind of crap. But that's that agent. He's not the agent. That's not his job. But, help us out and we'll try to recruit those kids. I think the showcases are great. I think they're, if they're at a time when, the Division I's can go, then that's great. A lot of times they hold them when the Division I's can't go because they're not in an evaluation period or a period where we can go to camps and those kinds of things. So we can't get to them, just as Cheech said. It's a lot of camps and showcases we can't get to. But when they do have them, it's great to be able to go. Like we go out to Northwestern, to their camp and watch. We get kids out of that camp every year. The Fisher camp is good for, I've gotten a couple of kids out of that camp that have, made it to, they haven't signed with us, but they've made it down to Colgate for things like that. So, I think when, prospects can get to those things and be able to showcase their skills. The one thing that, and I'm just going to go off on a topic here, Frank, if you don't mind, but, with this COVID-19 stuff, that part of things is going to get really screwed up for young men. I feel bad because there's not going to be any camps this summer, and recruiting, I think, is going to go a lot slower. The pace is going to be a lot slower than it's been as we move forward here, because we don't have the evaluation periods that we've had to be able to evaluate kids. So we're going to have to wait for senior film and all that kind of stuff at our level. So I think, it's, all the camps that kids go to during the summer, They're not going to have it.
Would you, if there's a state out there, like say South Dakota is like not sheltering anybody, there's a camp out in South Dakota, do you send your kid there if you have the means?
If you want him to go to school in South Dakota.
I'm just saying, I mean, if you think your son is D1 material, you'd have to probably travel somewhere where they may have a showcase. We know we're not going to have him here.
Yeah, no, they're not going to. No, and it depends. I mean, if he's an FBS kid, if he's a Power 5 kid, everybody, you know it now. You know, I mean, the kid's already been to a camp. He was there last year as a sophomore probably, and he's probably already got his stuff in a sense. The kids that I think are going to kind of it's going to hurt are our kids, the kids that are the FCS kids, that are trying to be FCS kids. I can't tell you how many times I've had. We've gotten kids out of our camp. I said, hey guys, especially from like Western New York or, Western PA that I recruit, I say, listen, if you want a shot to come to Colgate, you got to come to our camp. They come to our camp and then all of a sudden they run a 4.5 and they jump out of the roof. And, all of a sudden he went from, 0 to hero in a matter of minutes. And now we recruit him and offer him a $250,000 scholarship. Why? Because he came to camp. If he hadn't come to camp, he would have never gotten it. So there's a lot of kids out there that make it to our level, to Delaware, to Villanova, because they go to those camps. And all of a sudden they say, ooh, wait a minute, this kid's pretty good. But those camps aren't going to occur, But I don't know if a Western New York kid sends, family, he's going to go to South Dakota State's camp, and he's going to get looked at by the people he wants to be looked at.
Yeah, I mean, South Dakota is an extreme example, of course.
Right, but my point is that unless I want to go to the Midwest, why would I go there? I want to go to the camps that are going to be in the areas in which the coaches that I want recruiting me are going to be going to, and try not to get into a meat market. Like some of these camps are just, so big that it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to find you anyways.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, it was great talking. I could do this all day, and I know you guys got other things going on in your lives. I don't want to take
we can talk more
for your time. But I'd like to do this again. If you got time at another point, I'd love to follow up, either in a group setting or individually. There's a lot more questions I haven't been able to get to. That's why I'm hoping to do this again in the not too distant future. But there's a lot of people that hopefully had their questions answered. And hopefully we've been able to highlight your program individually at some point throughout this process, and that your emails are filled with legit D3 or D1 talent. I hope that we are able to provide that for you at least. It wasn't a total waste of your time, but I loved what I heard today, and I know a lot of our followers will be having the same thoughts. So I want to thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
WNYathletics.com is the premier high school sports website in Western New York, providing the best sports coverage of Section 6 and Monsignor Martin leagues. Check out our page for daily game recaps and late-breaking sports news. Our online scoreboards are updated in real time. Never miss a goal or touchdown. Visit WNYathletics.com today or follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube.
Now, you got to admit, that was very, very informative. We learned a lot today about what goes into college football recruiting, and it applies to other sports as well. Now, I don't want to just do one of these recruiting shows all about football. We're going to do more. I'm going to get some basketball coaches on, softball, baseball, lacrosse. We're going to talk to them all. Track and field as well. We want to know what it takes to get seen, looks by these colleges. And are you being moved in the right direction? D1, D2, D3, JUCO? Or maybe even go to a prep school. These are all things that you have to think about, but you can't wait till the last couple of months of your senior year. High school is 4 years. You need to put the effort in all 4 years, not just in a particular athletic sport, but in the classroom. As you heard from these coaches, you need to be in the 85 range, plus score high on your SATs or ACTs. If you don't, you're wasting a lot of time. Don't think about going D1. If you're in the 70s right now, if you're in the 70s, low 80s, and you're not scoring well on your SATs and ACTs, start looking at D3s. Start looking at that JUCO route because the D1s aren't coming. You heard it right from Colgate coach, Coach Shaffner. And, you know, we see it time and again. We see it time and again. Putting your offers out there, celebrating, looking good, it's all well and good. But some coaches will frown on that. Transferring from school to school, you heard it from the coaches themselves. It's a bad look. And off the air, they had a lot to say about transfers and being able to deal with adversity or not. If you can't deal with simple adversity like a coaching change and you split, coaches are going to ask you about that. They're going to want to know why. You left because a head coach left? Okay. It's a strike against you with some of these coaches. Not all. Watch who's handling your business. Your high school head coach should be doing it for you. If he's not, then you got to have a conversation with him. Got to have a conversation with him. Talk to the AD. Your high school coach should be entertaining these college coaches when they come to want to talk. We know for certain now. You heard it right from the coaches. They've attempted to go to certain schools, and they were not allowed to talk to certain players. And it cost those players. It could have cost one in particular, I know of personally. Be careful what you're doing out there. Put the work and the time and the effort in the classroom too. It's not just about athletics. Because again, if you're not scoring high enough on your tests, if you're not carrying a good average, you're not getting that D1 look no matter who you are, no how fast you run, how many catches you have, how many touchdowns, how far you can throw the ball, how many yards you had. It's not gonna matter if you're not pulling that 85 average and scoring high in the ACT or SAT. You heard it right from the coach's mouth. So put the effort in the classroom just as well. And watch who's watching your back. Are they looking out for you, the high school athlete, looking to make it to the next level, college, D3, D2, D1? Look at all your options. Do not sit and wait on those D1 offers. If you're not being offered by a D1 school in January of your senior year and you're a football player, you're not getting offered, guys. You're not getting offered. So take those meetings. And what's the harm in taking a meeting with a D3 coach? Even if you're not going to go there, sit down. Listen to what he has to say. Things change. Things change. Maybe you're at a D1 school and you know, you were hell-bent on going D1 and you go D1. You get there and you find out you're not fitting in. This is too big a school for you. You can't cut it there. Remember those relationships you had with those D3 coaches that really wanted you back in, you know, October or September or November, whatever, of your senior year. Remember those coaches that came looking for you. That's why you take those meetings. Build relationships. It's good to build relationships. Never a good thing to burn them. Don't burn bridges. Build relationships. You're going to find out that'll help you down the line. So today was a great show. I really had a lot of fun with Coach Shaffner, Coach Mangone, and Coach Ozolins from Buff State. Thank you very much to those guys for coming in today. We're going to do it again. We're going to do it again quickly. We're going to have more coaches on talking about the recruiting process. Thursday, Drew Westmoreland from Wilson is coming in. Friday, Joe Kraus, the professor. Next Monday, Harry Skull from the Buffalo News. A lot to talk about. Thank you for joining me tonight on the Sportsline. Have a good night, everybody. God bless.